how do we know when we're no longer influenced? So not only for seeing others who are transcendental to the modes of material nature, but also for ourselves. By which symptoms, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior? And how does he transcend the modes of nature? So, what are the symptoms? How does he behave? And a very important question is, how do you get to that point? Okay, we know transcending the modes of nature is very important. It's very recommended. We know we don't want to be influenced by these modes of material nature. So we need to know the process, how we can transcend these modes of material nature. And now the next, I'm not going to go into the next verses now. Hopefully I could fill in the time with some other things, other verses and things, so that whoever's giving class next can have a nice class to give. Uh, but there's a very nice verse after this verse. Okay, so I'm going now to the second chapter, 245, which Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna Nidvandvo Nityasattvasto Niyoga Kshema Atmavan. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. So this is another interesting part. This is just one, the first part, first sentence in this particular verse is what the Vedas mainly deal with. And that's why Narada Muni told Vyasadeva he's not satisfied, because Vyasadeva came to him submissively, as one has to approach the guru, submissively asking, I did all of this. I wrote all the Vedas. I'm still not satisfied. I feel despondent. Why? And he told him, because mainly you just talked about the three modes of material nature. You didn't talk about the transcendence. You didn't talk about Krishna. So here the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. So same thing here, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So I'll read this purport. All material activities involve actions and reactions in the three modes of material nature. So everything we do is in these modes of nature. Now, we want to try to do things more in the mode of goodness. And if we do everything always in goodness, then it's called Shuddha Sattva, or pure goodness. And that's a transcendental position, when we're no longer influenced by passion and ignorance. So they are meant for fruitive results which cause bondage in the material world. Material activities involve the reaction and modes which are meant for fruitive results. The Vedas deal mostly with fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. So the Vedas gradually try to elevate someone, or everyone, from these modes of nature. But they mainly deal with the modes of nature and try to gradually elevate one. Arjuna, as a student and friend of the Lord, is advised to rise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jignasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. So all the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of the material world, gave the Vedic wisdom, advising how to live and get rid of the material entanglement. So the Vedas are telling you how to live in this world. You perform sacrifice. You want something, you perform sacrifice. Now, and that sacrifice is offering to different demigods. But all sacrifices have offerings to Vishnu, any type of sacrifice, but you offer to some particular demigod, but then there may be some prayer in it, offering some prayer to Vishnu. So that's the sacrifice. The sacrifice people are doing today is, well, they work, they got a job, and it's a sacrifice. They have to put in so much time. That's their sacrifice, and then they get paid, and they use that money for sense gratification, which is what most of the Vedas deal with. But it's in getting that sense gratification in a proper way, which will help one advance spiritually and eventually become detached. Maybe a very long, slow program, but the other program of not performing sacrifices or performing a sacrifice of working to get money, that sacrifice is just going to bring one down to the material world, using that money for sense gratification. There's no sacrifice. I mean, that's not really considered a sacrifice, at least not according to the Vedas. So when the activities for sense gratification, namely the Karma Kanda chapters, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of the Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas. As the Bhagavad Gita is part of the fifth Veda, namely the Mahabharata. The Upanishads mark the beginning of transcendental life. So you get to a point, you're satisfied, then you go a little bit further and you can learn something about transcendence. So as long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of duality, such as happiness and distress. So in other words, we have to know what we have to do. We have to, surrender to Krishna. We have to chant Hare Krishna. We have to read scriptures. We have to do so many things. And we have to tolerate all these different things that may interfere with our particular service or our particular duty. So we have to tolerate happiness and distress. It's easy to tolerate happiness, but tolerating happiness means not letting it interfere with your Krishna consciousness. That's how we tolerate it. And we have to tolerate distress. Distress is something we all experience, and we generally don't have much choice about it. We have it. We got to try to deal with it. We can become morose. We can become depressed, or we can just go on with doing our activities, and the distress will go away. Both happiness and distress come and go. You can't be always distressed, and you can't be always happy. They're both, whatever. We should know when we are distressed, lots of times we think that this is never going to end. But we have to be philosophical and we have to be practical. Every other time I've been in distress, it always ended. This distress seems longer than normal, but it's going to end. So tolerate it, without being disturbed. Tolerate cold and warmth. The hot and cold, I still got to do things. Like Prabhupada gives the example of bathing in the wintertime. Of course, in America, in the wintertime, you're inside the house. It's nice and warm, so you take a bath. It's no big deal. But in India, you take a bath outside in the river in the cold. Doesn't matter. You still have to take your bath. I mean, it's still not as cold as here. We've taken baths in rivers here in freezing cold below 32 degrees. And it's really, really cold. And the water would have been frozen, except it was moving so fast that's why it didn't freeze. That's not what we mean by tolerating. But we did because we had to take a bath. But in general, you take a bath, even if it's cold, you have to take a bath. And if it's hot, Prabhupada gives the example, you have to cook. So you have to cook in the kitchen, even if it's hot, because you have to make an offering to Krishna. So we tolerate these things, tolerate this heat and cold, happiness and distress. And by tolerating such dualities, become free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. So that's another thing. We have to, in this verse, free from the dualities and from the anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Gain and safety, Prabhupada says gain and loss in the purport. So, we get something, we try to figure out how we're going to gain this, how we're going to obtain it. We get an anxiety about it, and we shouldn't be in anxiety about it. We either get it or we don't get it. And the same thing, I don't want to lose this. How am I going to protect this? We should just don't waste so much time trying to figure out how you're going to protect something. If Krishna wants you to have it, you'll keep it. If he doesn't, he'll take it away. I mean, you got to do something, but you shouldn't be in anxiety about it. So this transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. That's the secret. Fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. Krishna is giving me this, he can take it away. It's not mine anyway, it's his. And everything that belongs to him should be used for him. So we have to somehow be transcendental. And that means thinking everything is Krishna's, everything belongs to Krishna. Krishna is giving me all these things, so now I have to use it for him. Krishna takes it away, well, I can't use it for him anymore. So it's no loss. It's not our loss. It's not Krishna's loss because he owns everything anyway. But this is part of how we can transcend these modes of nature. I'm going to read this verse again. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. And that's 245 in the Bhagavad Gita. So now, there's another verse. Well, I'm going to go back to the original verse first. Actually, I'm going to find the next verse here. There are a lot of verses. Okay. So now, in this verse again, Arjuna inquired, "O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior? And how does he transcend the modes of nature?" So this is, as I mentioned, is the devotee asks questions. And Arjuna is asking these questions not even really for his benefit, although he was put into this illusion so that he can ask these questions, but for our benefit. So we don't just accept somebody as spiritual just because they act like they're in the mode of a certain mode of nature. So I was going to read another verse which is relevant to this verse, and it's in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya dharatyaya mamevaye papadyante maya metam tarantite. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So we see so many places in different ways, Krishna saying the same thing, how to get, who's transcendental to these three modes. And here the same thing, this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature. So this energy is divine because it's coming from Krishna. It's not like this is spiritual and we want to be situated in these modes, but because it's coming from Krishna, it is divine. And it's difficult to overcome. The Krishna is saying, this divine energy of mine, it's not Arjuna saying it's difficult to overcome. Krishna is saying it's difficult to overcome, consisting of the three modes of material nature. It's difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So if you can surrender, so the difficulty is surrendering unto Krishna. That's the difficulty. Surrendering not just for one moment, 1 minute, 1 day, but surrendering all the time. to Krishna. That's difficult. It's not so easy because Maya is always going to try to deviate us from that position of surrendering to Krishna. But if we do, then we cross beyond these modes of material nature. And I'm not going to read the other verses, but basically the other verses give different examples. How to surrender, or what are the qualities, or what is behavior of someone who's actually surrendered. So I'm going to read this purport also. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has innumerable energies. Let's see. Innumerable energies. Parasya Shakti Shuradaiva Vidyate. That he has unlimited energies. And all these energies are divine. So this is the material energy. It's divine because it's one of Krishna's energies. Although the living entities are part of his energies and are therefore divine, due to contact with material energy, their original superior power is covered. So we're spiritual, but we're like little tiny spiritual sparks. We can be covered. Krishna can't be covered. Like the sun can cover one city. I mean, the clouds can cover one city from the sun, but the sun is still there somewhere. But if you're above the clouds, then you can see the sun. So those who are transcendental, who are always on the spiritual platform, they're always seeing Krishna. They're always with Krishna. But some of us, we're marginal energy because we can be covered. We can get influenced by the spiritual energy or by the material energy, either one. And we do. All the devotees are influenced by the spiritual energy sometimes and by the material energy other times, because we're marginal. Until we become pure devotees, then we're no longer influenced by the material energy at all. So being thus covered by material energy, one cannot possibly overcome its influence. You know, you're in an ocean. How are you going to get out of this ocean? You can't unless you have help, as some boat comes by. So as previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord. But due to the contamination of the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. Now, the illusion is eternal. Prabhupada says we're nitya siddhas, nitya baddhas, or eternally conditioned or eternally liberated. And now it's hard for me to even understand how I'm eternally conditioned and then all of a sudden I become eternally liberated. But one of the things is you can't trace out when you became conditioned. You know, like some people say, well, I'm an old soul, you know, I'm an old soul. Everybody's an old soul. We're all just as old as each other. We're all the same age because we're all part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna's eternal, we're eternal. But sometimes people think that I've been in this material world, I guess, for a long time. I don't know what they think when they say that I'm an old soul, but that's what it seems like what they mean. But they may be older, but no wiser. But in this, let's see, the conditioned soul is therefore, oh yeah, you're going to get to that in a minute. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature matter, their illusion is also eternal. So we're actually considered eternally conditioned because we can't really trace out when. But I just see in the next sentence or two, it talks about this. The conditioned soul is therefore called nitya baddha, or eternally conditioned. no one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material history. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult, even though that material nature is an inferior energy, because material energy is ultimately conducted by the supreme will, which the living entity cannot overcome. So interesting here. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in the material history. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult. So you've been in here for so long. It's so long. You're just so conditioned. You're so used to it. It's very difficult for you to get out of it. It's very hard. When I say you, I mean all of us. It's very, very difficult to overcome this material energy because you've been in it for so long. You can relate to it. Just like your mind. You think a certain way because your mind is conditioned. You think of how you can enjoy these senses. And your mind tries to tell you different ways you can enjoy these senses. Now, to change your mind, it's not impossible, but it's difficult. I don't want to think of what's pleasurable to my material senses. I want to think of what's pleasurable to Krishna's senses. Now, that's a simple thing, but it's very difficult to do because we're conditioned for so long. We've been thinking a certain way, and now we're all of a sudden trying to change the way we're thinking. It's not an easy thing to do. So Krishna is also saying it's difficult, but it's certainly not impossible. And for those who can surrender to Krishna, then it's easy. It's difficult if you're not surrendering to Krishna, but if you're genuinely surrendering to Krishna, it's easy. And how do we surrender to Krishna? By following the instructions of the spiritual master, hearing and chanting, following certain regulated principles. By doing these things, this will help us. This is actually how we're following Krishna, how we're surrendering to Krishna. And then it's easy to change the way we're thinking. But it's we've been conditioned for a long time, so we have to just keep working at it. We have to, first of all, knowledge the difference between jnana and vijnana. Knowledge means knowing what is it I should be doing, who I am, why am I here, what's the purpose of life, what I should do. That's knowledge. Then the next thing is applying it, making ourselves do it. That's vijnana, practical application of the knowledge. So we have to apply it to our life. And then when we practically apply it, and just like in the previous, in the verse we read, or the previous verse, not being influenced by happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor. Not to be influenced by these things, but just do what we have to do in spite of honor and dishonor. Even honor, when we're being honored, we may think that, I'm pretty great, I'm pretty good. We start to get a little proud if we get honored. I mean, not necessarily, but we can. So in this honor, we want to, we want to explain how we really didn't do anything wrong. We want to convince people so they don't dishonor us. But we shouldn't care. We should just care what Krishna thinks. Krishna knows. So inferior material nature is defined herein as divine nature due to its divine connection and movement by the divine will. Being conducted by divine will, material nature, although inferior, acts so wonderfully in the construction and destruction of the cosmic manifestation. The Vedas confirm this as follows. Mayam tu prakritim vidyan, mayinam tu maheshwaram. Although Maya, illusion, is false or temporary, the background of Maya is the supreme. Does anybody know what the next word is? But if without reading it, Jiva, because she's not reading it. Although Maya, illusion, is false or temporary, the background of Maya is the supreme magician, the supreme personality of Godhead, who is Maheshwara, the supreme controller. That's straight to Svaratara Upanishad. He's the supreme magician. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the ropes of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. He must be helped by another person who is unbound, because the bound cannot help the bound. The rescuer must be liberated. Now we're talking about he's really bound up really well. You see in movies where you're tied up and somehow they get out. We're talking about you're tied up really well by somebody who's very experienced at tying knots, maybe a boatswain's mate in the Navy. So therefore, only Lord Krishna or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. So someone who's not bound can release you. Somebody who's in this material world, we're in this maze. It's an impossible maze to get out of. And someone in the maze is trying to tell us how to go. He doesn't know how to go. He's in the maze. He's stuck here too. But someone above the maze can look and see this is the way you go out. So the spiritual master, who is the representative of Krishna, Krishna sends the spiritual master. I mean, Krishna, if you're pure, Krishna can tell you within your heart. But generally, we have to become pure by surrendering to the spiritual master or the representative of Krishna. He sends his representative. If we deal with his representative very nicely, we please the representative, we try to serve the representative, then Krishna is pleased and helps us to get out of this maze. Only Lord Krishna or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. You know, you might, if you're in some maze, you might be able to eventually get out. I mean, they have little mazes here. They have, they make them on farms, like they cut out a maze on a farm with the big high wheat or whatever it might be that's growing. I don't know if anybody ever went to one of these mazes. I did with my kids. That's not so hard to get out of. But this material maze, it's impossible to get out of. So devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. Krishna, being the Lord of illusory energy, can order this insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. So that's it. Do something nice, please Krishna. And he tells the material energy, okay, that's enough. Leave him alone. And material nature is Krishna's energy. Krishna's energy does whatever Krishna wants. So he makes it easy. It says when one surrenders to the spiritual master, sometimes by making an effort to surrender, it becomes easier to follow the regulated principles. So he orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul and out of his paternal affection for the living entity who is originally a beloved son of the Lord. So he loves us, we're his sons, or sons, daughters, and he wants us back. But when we make this effort, then he lightens up a little. He tells the material nature to lighten up a little. Don't make it so difficult for him. So therefore, surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is the only means to get free from the clutches of the stringent material nature, or these modes of nature. It's the only way, by surrendering to the Lord. So, okay, I didn't finish the last paragraph, but let me just see if anyone has any questions first. Because then if there's no questions, I can read the last paragraph.
Not a question, but a comment.
Okay, Jiva has a comment. No, nobody else has questions. What's your comment?
Well, just the verse you did today is almost like 254.
Oh, another verse.
Yeah, Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk?"
Yeah, I'm laughing because I was also thinking of that verse and I couldn't find it. First of all, I just like you to know I had about 20 minutes to prepare for this class, but that's due to my own mismanagement. I got an email and I was dealing with this email to the last minute, but I thought of that verse and I thought, where is it? I couldn't find it, so I just skipped it. But that was another verse I thought of. So that's
Right,
interesting.
it's almost
And that was
the same.
what,
Chapter 2, text 54.
254. Okay.
Krishna's
So,
answer is a lot shorter than his answer in the next one, though.
oh, I know the next
Yeah.
answer is long.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, this is the answer.
Mhm.
So this is Krishna's answer in 255 to the similar, very similar question that we're going to get the answer from the 14th chapter tomorrow. But his answer in the second chapter is the Supreme Personality of God had said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind thus purified finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So this is really nice because when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, and there's a comma, which arise from mental concoction. All sense gratification arises from mental concoction. In your mind, you think how you can enjoy this. That's where it all starts. And that's where we try to enjoy sense gratification because we think, oh, this I can enjoy. This would be really nice. So when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which he has to give up this mental concoction of how you can enjoy. And when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Okay, anyone else have any comments? Okay, I'll read this last paragraph in this verse 715. Somebody has something? Here's the
Hare
love.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We just learned how to get over these three modes and become closer to Krishna and, surrender to Krishna so that we can be with, get over these three modes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to say. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to read
Have
the
a
last.
very nice night.
Thank you. The words mameva are also significant. Mam means unto Krishna, Vishnu only, and not Brahma or Shiva. Although Brahma and Shiva are greatly elevated and are almost on the level of Vishnu, it is not possible for such incarnations of Rajagun, passion, and Tamagun, ignorance, to release the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. This is interesting. You heard opposite?
Yeah, I mean,
Where?
yeah. I don't know, they were talking about Shiva.
Yeah, I know.
Those different.
I heard this. I was in Poland and the devotee gave a class and he was saying how Shiva can give liberation. And I said, I thought only Krishna, Mukunda can give liberation. And he said, no, there's some things about Shiva can give liberation. Now, that was, I didn't argue anymore. I was fine. But there was another devotee there who, he lives in Mayapur. He's a Spanish devotee, but he's like a Brahmin. He looks Indian, he dresses in, and you would not know that he's not Indian, but he's not Indian. And he started arguing with the person after I asked that question, saying that no, only Krishna can give liberation. So here, that's what it says. It is not possible for such incarnations of Rajagun and Tamagun to release the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. In other words, both Brahma and Shiva are also under the influence of Maya. Only Vishnu is the master of Maya. Therefore, he alone can give release to the conditioned soul. The Vedas, Svetasvatara Upanishad, confirm this in the phrase Tameva Viditva, or freedom is possible only by understanding Krishna. Even Lord Shiva affirms that liberation can be achieved only by the mercy of Vishnu. Lord Shiva says, Mukti Pradata Savesham Vishnu Eva Na Samshaya. There is no doubt that Vishnu is the deliverer of liberation for everyone. So,
which verse is that, Pyari?
which verse is what?
That you're where are you reading right now?
I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita 7:14.
7:14.
That's the end of the purport, pretty much the last paragraph. And the end of the last paragraph, actually. So even Lord Shiva affirms that. Now, so I think there may be some places where it does say Krishna or Shiva, can give liberation, because we understand the position of Lord Shiva. He's almost Vishnu. He's more than Brahma. Brahma is a jiva soul. Although sometimes Brahma, when there's no qualified Brahma, Krishna or Vishnu takes the position of Brahma. But in general, it's a jiva soul can be a Brahma. But Shiva is actually more than a jiva soul, but less than Vishnu. He's Shiva Tattva. There's different tattvas or truths. And Lord Shiva, he is almost God, or God transformed, or God who's is in contact with the material modes of nature. So I'm not saying it doesn't say anything anywhere where Shiva doesn't, but I like to keep it simple and just accept what Prabhupada says. It's good enough for me. And only Krishna can award liberation. And even if Shiva awards liberation, it's only that it's Krishna that's allowing it to happen. So in that sense, it's still Krishna. So we have to surrender to Krishna, not the Shiva or Brahma. And then one can be freed from the modes of material nature. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. Anything else? Any questions or comments?
A comment, when I was reading somewhere in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it does say that if you're exclusively worshiping Shiva for just his service and not for anything material, he can give you liberation or something. It does say something like that.
Yes, just like the spiritual master. I've heard a lecture with Prabhupada. There was a man who was arguing with Prabhupada how you can be a Shiva Bhakta, just devoted to Lord Shiva. And Prabhupada, the only way Prabhupada satisfied that man, he did it very nicely, of course, was yes, you can, but everyone who worships Lord Shiva wants something in return, something material in return. So that's not bhakti. Bhakti says only for Krishna, because Krishna, they worship Krishna. There are many devotees who worship Krishna not wanting anything in return, not caring if they get anything, not even caring about, liberation. Lord Chaitanya didn't care if he takes birth again and again and again, just as long as he's serving Krishna. Doesn't care if he's in the higher planets, lower planets, it doesn't matter. Just as long as he's engaged in serving Krishna. So devotees feel like that. The Shiva devotees, or they call them Shiva Bhaktas, they don't feel like that. They want something. So when Prabhupada explained to this man about that the people who are worshiping Shiva, they all want something. In theory, yes, it's possible. And if you're accepting Lord Shiva like a guru, yes, he can give liberation. But it's it's ultimately, it's Krishna that's giving the liberation. Just like you're worshiping your spiritual master, he's not really giving you liberation, but because he wants to, he wants you to be liberated. If you surrender to him, then Krishna gives you the liberation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, 8 minutes. Anything else?
He can liberate people from a ghostly existence.
Shiva says he can liberate people from a ghostly existence. So ghosts, they worship Lord Shiva to try to get a material body. And Lord Shiva can give them a material body. To explain that, when Shiva, someone who's worshiping him, who's a ghostly form, and he sees someone engaged in illicit sex, and he puts that living entity in the womb, in the semen, and then in the womb of the woman, and then she gives birth to somebody who was just happened to be a ghost just a short time ago, finally getting a body. Of course, nowadays, so many people get pregnant from illicit sex. But even the illicit sex, I'm not sure, because I in the Vedas, that was one kind of marriage, but they get married. You know, people, someone would have sex with someone, and that was a certain kind of marriage. And then you're married to the woman, and you stay with her, you know, I don't know, till you take sannyas, I guess.
Oh, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So it's fair to say that everything happens with Krishna's sanction, correct?
Yes.
So if I have a desire to surrender, and if I am not able to surrender, so is it I am lacking the strong desire, or Krishna is not sanctioning my surrender to his lotus feet?
Well, you could blame Krishna. First of all, that was 2 questions.
Thank you very much.
But of course, it's your lack of desire, not a very strong desire. What is it? Prabhupada says something about first deserve, then desire. So we have, you say that?
How
Can you elaborate on
Did you hear that?
that? I've heard that saying. Yeah.
First deserve, then desire. So you act in such a way, you really surrender to Krishna, then you desire. And not materially, you won't be desiring. So in other words, oh, Krishna, please give me liberation, but you don't do anything. You have to deserve it first. So you have to act in such a way, you have to really try to surrender. I mean, there's 2 types of surrender. Is the surrendering, we have to surrender our, you know, body, mind, and words. So the first thing is the body. We have to start making sure we're using the body in Krishna's service. And that's the easiest of them all, to use, to engage the body in Krishna's service. So physically, I'm always doing something for Krishna. That's how we have to be engaging the body. Then the mind. If we're actually always using the body for Krishna, then eventually we're going to start thinking about Krishna and what I can do for Krishna. And then once we start using the mind always for Krishna, then of course all the words are going to be used for Krishna. So when you're doing that, first deserve, then you deserve it. Then you deserve to go back to Godhead. Then you deserve to be pure. You know, so then you desire, but not trying to get it before you do anything. First deserve, then desire. So it's if we're having any difficulties, which everyone has, we have to see it as ourselves. There's different ways people see it. One is it's Krishna's fault. Another is nobody can do this because I can't do it. Nobody can do it. But we have to see that I'm weak. I'm conditioned. I still want to enjoy my senses. So therefore, I'm having problems surrendering. That's a humble, realistic way of looking at it. And to try to blame someone else, it's no one else's fault but ourselves. Why we're not surrendering. And even what we get, we deserve it. You know, people talk about why this is happening to me. Why am I suffering like this? I'm suffering like this because I deserve it, because I did something in the past to deserve this suffering. That's why I'm suffering. Not because no reason at all, just whimsically decides, let me make this person suffer. You know, in the Bible, it says, as you sow, so shall you reap. And we know that as karma. Problem with the Bible is it makes no sense when it's just this life. And I didn't do anything wrong in this life, and now I'm suffering like anything. But at least with karma, we know it's so many lives that I'm going through so much misery for so many things I did. I don't even know what it is I did. I may not even remember what it is I did in this life. So how am I going to remember other lives?
But with our limited capacity, do we ever deserve?
Yes. You don't have to be unlimited to deserve. It's your sincerity. That's what it is. How sincere you are and how much you're really genuinely trying to please Krishna. And then you deserve.
Yeah. The sincerity counts, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Thank you for the answer. And I have one last comment.
Okay, you got 1 minute.
Yeah, you have a nice T-shirt.
Oh yes, Shringadev.
Jai Nrsimhadev. Prabhuji, with your permission, can I add something?
Sure.
So I don't know if Prabhuji's question was regarding how much time it will take for the spiritual advancement. There is one story regarding that. So there is a guru disciple. So this disciple asked his guru that, Guruji, why does it take more time for me to surrender or to do, spiritual submission, like spiritual realization? So this guru said that you come tomorrow morning and I will tell you. So what this disciple does, he think about, okay, tomorrow I'm going to get the answer why it takes more time for the spiritual realization or surrendering process. So he goes, and this guru, he is embracing a tree trunk, and he's saying in the morning when he goes, he sees that his guru is embracing a tree, and then he's saying that, okay, let me go tree, let me go, let me go. But this disciple is thinking, why my guru is doing like that? He said, okay, Guruji, you can leave this tree, and then why you are saying the tree has not hold of you? It is you who have holded of the tree. So he said, okay, that's what exactly I wanted to teach you, because it's our desire, our attachment, which we are unable to leave because we are so much attached to everything. And that's how it is very difficult for us to do the surrender or do spiritual realization quickly. So just thought of sharing that. Hare Krishna.
Didn't you say you have a question?
No, Prabhuji, it was just the comment. I just wanted to share this past story.
I think you said a question though, but that's fine. That's a nice story.
So, Mataji, you are saying that we have attachment to material things. That's why we don't progress.
Yes, Prabhuji, because here, I mean, if we, let's say a small example, if we can take how much time we have heard that we should chant in the morning, but let's say if we do one day enthusiasm and then other day we feel like, okay, why I should get up and all those things. So we have to be consistent in our doing the sadhana and all those things. And also Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur also says that he says the story of a boatman who who think that he is going to the place, but he has forgot to remove the anchor. So, so we have to remove that anchor or attachments. That's why, Prabhu.
But what we learn from Bhagavatam, that Lord Kapil Dev said that we have attachment and we have to divert that attachment to our guru or saintly personality.
Yes,
Because
Prabhu. So,
because we only
yes.
have attachment, we can't get detachment.
Yeah,
We don't
that is for material desires only, Prabhu. So, attachment to the devotees will open the door for liberation. That is true, which you are saying, Kapila Dev's mentions, Prabhuji. Attachment to the devotees will lead the door of liberation, Prabhu. That.
The tree is a material thing that you're attached to. So you give that up and you could become attached to the spiritual. The tree is representing the material. It's deep rooted.
So it's not the attachment that lets us go. It's we who have to let go of the attachment, is what she was trying to say.
That's it. You got it. Bingo.
Bingo.
But it will happen automatically if you become attached to Krishna.
I don't know if you heard that, but Jiva said it will happen automatically if you become attached to Krishna.
Krishna, yeah.
Yes,
But-
so it's a fact. You can't really become detached unless you become attached to Krishna.
Yeah.
You really can't.
I think that's.
I'm not going to be attached. I'm not going to be attached. I'm not attached. I'm not. And then I'm attached. I have to be attached to something. So we have to change the attachment from material to spiritual. And we have plenty of things to be attached to spiritually. We can hear so many wonderful pastimes, so much philosophy, so many things to attract us to Krishna.
And I like Padmalochani's example. I get up one day in the morning and then, finish all my rounds the next time, and the next day it doesn't happen.
Anybody ever have that problem?
Happens more often than not.
Yeah, so we just have to keep trying. Just be sincere.
I know, but that's something that isn't that something, a habit that you need to make since from childhood. It's so much easier if it's a habit that made since childhood.
In the Bhagavad Gita it says, in the beginning, curb this most sinful enemy in the form of lust. In the beginning. So when is the beginning? Beginning is in childhood. The beginning is whenever you start. That's the beginning. Just start now, whenever it happens to be.
I know. I know so many karmis who were trained to get up early in the morning since childhood and just automatically get up, and they have no problem getting up in the morning.
Right. It's not your fault. It's your mother's fault.
It is my mother's fault. My poor grandfather used to yell at my mother, why are you letting the children sleep? The sun is on their butt and they're still sleeping, and my mother used to say, Dad, let them sleep. You know what I'm saying? So I remember that.
Yeah, there's an example of someone who was murdered some people. He was a murderer, and he was going to get executed, but he wanted to just talk to his mother for one last time. He wanted to tell her something in her ear. And then his mother came up, they let his mother come up, and he bit off her ear, and he blamed her. If you would have been strict with me, I wouldn't have done these things.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but
well, the point is we can't blame someone else. It's up to us.
I know, but it's harder is what I'm saying. I know some of my friends who get up at 5:30 in the morning and have bed tea, you know what I'm saying? A tea on their bed. And you can't call them after 9 o'clock because they're so used to going to bed early and rising early, but they don't chant. They're not getting up and doing anything Krishna conscious, but they have a good habit.
out of the two, getting up later and chanting Hare Krishna, or getting up earlier and drinking tea or something, which is better? Of course, chanting Hare Krishna is better.
The second one is better. So
But
I'm
you can't, it's not, I mean, you were born in an Indian family. You were born with hearing these pastimes from childhood. Look at us. We just born in Malecha, I don't know what, lower than Shudra families, with learning how to do everything bad, no culture whatsoever, but yet we're trying to surrender to Krishna, and Krishna's helping, he's reciprocating. So it has nothing to do with any way we had it, whatever we did in the past. The past,
Yeah.
just forget about it. We just start fresh.
excuses, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Answering your own question.
But nonetheless, getting up early is not one of my strong points, is what
I
I'm
kind of got that. Okay, so let's offer our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Pasindev Chapatitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namo. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.